The rebuild's on, but who's getting all the work and are we rebuilding better than before? Today's guest on Point of View is the builder with his thumb on the pulse, Clive Barrington from the Canterbury branch of the Master Builders Association. Where's the most building work occurring for local house builders?
Obviously in the residential sector, on the outskirts of Christchurch, it's just, going mad from north right through to southwest. Subdivisions popping up in all those areas. It's out of control almost.
So is there also a lot of rebuilding going on in some of the suburbs where there was significant damage, or is that much slower than the new build?
It's very much slower. There's houses scattered around, but nowhere near the extent that there probably should be.
So who's enjoying the building boom? Is it all just the group housing companies, or some of the independent builders getting a look in as well?
Some of the large design and build house companies seem to be doing most of them. They seem to have sparked up a relationship with various insurance companies, and I guess it's a one-stop shop for the insurance company. So they seem to be very busy.
Prior to the earthquakes, but also obviously post them, there's been a lot of talk about a deficiency of trained trades workers. I imagine that the earthquakes hasn't helped, or has there been some catch-up? Are you still desperately trying to find trained staff?
Yeah, there's certainly not enough trained staff at the moment. They're trying to get more apprenticeships, but it's too late. There's a huge shortage of good, skilled, experienced tradesmen at the moment.
So does that mean the different building companies are poaching workers? I mean, are you struggling to keep your own staff?
Well, we've always looked after our staff, Grant. I mean, we do our best, but you establish a good brand, and I guess your men are always sought after. So there is a bit of poaching, I guess, going on, but I think that's always gone on.
So how long do you think the current building boom will last?
Well, to me, I don't think it's going to happen as quick as everybody thought. Well, obviously, for the last 3 years, there hasn't been a lot happen. And I can see this kind of thing going on for 7 or 8 years. That's my prediction.
Really, that long? Yeah. So does that mean that the shortage of experienced trade staff actually is going to continue being a problem, or if it's going to be that long, is there time to get more people through training and try to resolve some of those issues?
Well, hopefully. I mean, the apprenticeship levels are up substantially across the country, really. And of course, we're getting a lot of people come to Christchurch looking for work. Experienced tradesmen from Europe, and of course, places like the Philippines. There are a lot of people coming here to work. I guess it's not a bad country to live in. So, it'll fix itself up eventually, I guess.
Now, those people who are coming here to work, is there an expectation that they'll like the place so much that they'll stay, or is the impression you get that they've been lured here by work and money, and that the moment the money tap's turned off, they'll be gone?
Don't know. I think there's a mixture of both. We've got a couple on the staff that have come from elsewhere, and they seem to be enjoying it, and their families have followed. But I guess there's always people that still like their home country.
Who's buying all the new houses that are actually being built in these new suburbs? Is it all just people who've been displaced from the red zone, or is the picture more complex than that?
I think there's a bit of both. There's definitely red zoners moving, or people with badly damaged houses have decided to shift out of the city a little bit, don't like the untidy city, they want to get out into the green grass. But there's several people just simply upgrading because of the housing shortage, I think. They're selling their house and moving on to the next one. There's quite a lot of that going on. A lot of the houses we're doing, it's just people upgrading.
Right. So that's, I suppose that's almost a natural process though, isn't it? That actually people would upgrade over time. Have the earthquakes in that case just, I suppose, accelerated that?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, there's people with city housing stock getting pretty good money for them these days, and they're moving out a little bit, getting a brand new house, leaving their house in Papanui that they're getting good money for, and and moving to Rolleston and getting a brand new house. How they'll get into town, I don't know. They probably haven't thought about that, but that's common.
Yeah, I'll come back to that point, because I'm also quite intrigued about whether people who are moving to these far-flung suburbs have actually thought through the consequences of being many miles away from their friends, their school, their work, whatever that might be. But the other thing that's had a lot of people talking about lately is the issue of the cost of housing. And you mentioned, for example, that people are getting good prices for selling their existing houses in the city and moving out to new houses, but new houses aren't cheap either. So why are new houses so expensive?
I guess it's supply and demand. First of all, the land costs are high. The council fees are high. It costs a lot to develop land these days. There's health and safety, for example, that's through the roof. That's a major cost to a house now. Everything's got to be scaffolded, etc., which I guess rightly so. But I mean, it's all added cost. Costs of labour's going up, all the time now. Stuff like timber's gone up, concrete, general building materials. It's everything.
So I'm curious to know why some of these materials gone up. After all, we keep being told that New Zealand's got this great wall of wood, and there's a great availability of wood, and concrete, after all, comes from is part shingle and water, and there doesn't seem to be any great shortage of shingle either. But
yeah, but I guess it's New Zealand made, isn't it? I mean, we're not paying slave labour for processing timber, for example. So. Anything made in New Zealand is always pretty damn good, and you pay for it.
Right. So what's the cost then of building a house in terms of like square meterage? As a builder, what are you actually kind of working on as a basic kind of a guide?
Well, that's quite a difficult one to answer. I mean, how long's a piece of string? But let's put it another way. It's pretty difficult nowadays to build a house under about $300,000 plus the land.
So what do you get for your $300,000 in that case? Are we talking 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom?
A 3-bedroom house with an attached garage.
3-bedroom house with an attached garage for $300,000.
No frills.
No frills, plus the land, and a section's what, 150, 200,000?
Exactly.
So $500,000 doesn't sound very affordable, does it?
It doesn't. I don't know how young people are ever going to afford it. It's you certainly see house and land packages for sale around the low 400s, but they're generally smaller than what the average kind of punter wants. Houses generally have got bigger now. If you go back, to our day, we all lived at 130 square metre, 1 bathroom, 3-bedroom home. Now, 2 bathrooms is sort of the norm.
Almost considered the minimum, I suppose, actually.
And so is a attached double garage is kind of almost expected now, whereas if you went back, 40 years ago, the garage was built after in a working bee. Well, that doesn't cut it anymore.
So are we the authors of our own misery then? Has housing become expensive because we actually now have an inflated shopping list of the things we actually think we need?
I think so. Houses are getting bigger, there's no doubt about that. Go out to the subdivisions and have a look. The houses have got bigger and the land's got smaller. And that appears to be what the average person wants.
So what do we need to do in that case to actually make housing more affordable? Is it simply a case then we just have to shrink the size of the houses?
Well, I think so. I think we've got to educate people to be able to live in a smaller house with 1 bathroom. It's... and perhaps, dare I say it, have 1 car. It's everybody today has to have 2 living rooms, but we were all brought up with 1, and it appeared to work. So why has that changed?
Do people make poor choices as well, do you think? I mean, I know that some people, it seems to me, are more interested in getting granite bench tops and designer taps rather than perhaps thinking about how they can minimise their power bills, or whether they should actually spend more money on insulation or some of those other features. Are you finding that people are well
Exactly.
educated about the choices?
The average person prefers the bells and whistles rather than what you can't see. There's no doubt about that. We're not very good at insulation, for example, in this country. We can't see it, so we don't care about it. I mean, our houses have certainly got better as far as that stuff's concerned, but it could be a lot better in several areas. But the average person just doesn't care about it. I guess they turn the heat pump up. Well, I think there's architects and architects, of course. Some are very good, some aren't so good. And of course, though, there's all different budgets. Sadly, most of the architect-designed houses are at the high end. It would be nice to see some architect-designed houses at the lower end, but it all comes down to cost, I guess. But certainly there's room for improvement architecturally across the board, I feel.
With 10,000 or so new houses being built over the next few years, this would seem like a great opportunity to design and build better houses, more insulation, perhaps solar power or water, features like that. Are you seeing much of those type of innovations?
No, it's the same old, same old. And it's still really, I think, the cheapest way to build a house in this town. And on a world scale, they are good houses. But we could certainly do a lot better in the design of the smaller modern home. But a lot of people have tried it, including myself, and the public just don't want it. They want the same old type of house that we've always been building for the last 30 years. And anybody that seems to try to do something different, it doesn't appear to work. Subdivisions, for example, they put covenants on them, so houses have got to be like over 150 square metres to protect people's investment, as they put it. We simply don't need, for the young people coming through, those houses. They could still be done very, very well, architecturally designed, and cost effective, but it's just not what people want.
How big a role do you think things like these covenants actually play, or how destructive a role do they actually play in limiting people's choices or options?
Well, I think it's the whole subdivision thing. We're getting like America. We put a subdivision, and this is only my point of view, but we put a subdivision up now, and instead of calling it, Burwood, we call it a fancy name and put a fancy brick fence up and set the rules, and it sort of sets the tone for the whole outfit, and it's all about building a bigger house than you really need and making it look flashy.
I do wonder about the claims that covenants protect your investment, because I've often thought that if that was the case, then suburbs like Maryvale and Fendalton, which are full of a combination of ownership flats from the 60s next to villas, next to student rentals, next to $4 million homes,
Sure,
wouldn't be the most sought after suburbs. And yet, in actual fact, in terms of property values, it's the Hills, it's Maryvale, it's Fendalton, Sumner, but they don't have covenants, and they're a mixture.
yeah, and they've got history, and large trees and things, I guess. Yeah, a much better mix of houses and people that live there.
I think the other thing that I find quite depressing is the fact that a lot of these new subdivisions, the houses all have a sameness to them as well. Is that something that you kind of notice and are aware of as well?
Yeah, well, it's the town planning rules too. Like if you look into a new subdivision now, everybody's garage door's the same distance from the street because it's the most economical and best place to put it. And everybody's sort of southwest or southeast side is, 6 feet from the fence because that's as close as you're allowed to go, and then that gives you a better lawn on the northwest side. So, it's they're working on with town planning rules and trying to avoid resource consents, which are costly and hold projects up.
So whose job is it, do you think, to actually educate people, if that's what the problem is here, to make people ask different questions of the building companies or their architects or whoever's doing the build for them about what their choices are, and that, in particular, I'm thinking that they don't have to have, or they shouldn't need to have to build a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom, 3-car garage house if they don't want it.
Well, I think it starts at the subdivision. It starts with the councils. I mean, I think they should be designing subdivisions that are perhaps different to the norm, where you have a mix of large and small and terraced housing and large housing, and perhaps bending the rules a little bit to give the thing a little bit more shape. And it seems senseless applying for a resource consent because the spouting is sticking through the recession plane, where that's just absolutely silly. Houses are like you've described because sometimes because of silly town planning rules.
Do architects do a better job of designing? It does seem sometimes that some of them are obsessed with flat roofs, lots of concrete and floor-to-ceiling glass.
Oh, I think there's architects and architects. Some are very good and some are average. Sadly, most of the architect-designed houses are at the high end. It would be nice to see some architect-designed houses at the lower end, but it all comes down to cost, I guess. But certainly there's room for improvement architecturally across the board, I feel.
Now, what happened to the goal of getting 30,000 people to live in townhouses and apartments in the central city? Are you aware of anyone who is actually building housing in the central city?
There's a handful of developers at the moment doing apartments, but generally at the high end. I guess people are just not flocking to live in the inner city at the moment because frankly, it's awful.
What will it take, do you think, to get people to move back into the central city? Is it just going to be getting the right priced housing, or are there other things that need to happen?
Well, the city needs to be better for a start. It needs to be more enticing, but the east side of the city could be redeveloped very well if they put their thinking cap on. I mean, it's such a desirable place to live if there were things to do there.
Mm.
So, who knows? Well, all sorts of people. Some people are so grateful that you're going around to fix their house. Some people are grumpy when you get there. They're arguing with EQC, etc., which we've all read about and seen over the last 3 years. But it is quite stressful because you're moving people out of their house. You've given them a period of, say, 6 weeks, and you've promised that it would be, finished by then, and they have to move back in because they've got nowhere to go. So, that's hard going. It's probably easier to go and build a new house. And of course, in a lot of cases, you're still involving the same subcontractors, the same amount of subcontractors and different people involved. So, it's been really tough.
Your business, Clive Barrington Construction, works mostly at the upper end of the market in those million sort of plus houses. How did the earthquakes affect your business?
Well, it was quite difficult for a start. I mean, most of our work is Fennelton, Mirrorvale, Cashmere, Sumner, Redcliffs. And of course, after the quakes, especially the February quake, most of that work stopped. So, what do you do with 40 staff? It was all a bit difficult there for a while. So we had to turn to Fletcher EQR repairs, which is the repairs under 100,000, and turn into sort of a half-pine maintenance company to survive. So although we're kind of weaning ourselves off that now, that was how we got through the thing.
So what was that like as an experience? that transition to more maintenance rebuild kind of work rather than new builds, which obviously is what you've been doing previously?
Well, some of the men liked it. You know, we've got older men in the company that can paint, plaster, tile, you know, and they were fine. But, you know, the younger people generally like to be building something new. So, you know, we had to regroup and work through those issues. But it's, you know, we've survived. So.
And what was the experience like of working with, I mean, because obviously these are very, very different clients, because in the past, if you're working for an architect or working for customers who are writing out a $1 million, $2 million check, that's very different from an insurance job for under 100,000. Was that a cultural shift that you had to make?
Oh, definitely. And, you know, you're dealing with all sorts of people. Some people are so grateful that you're going around to fix their house. Some people are grumpy when you get there. They're arguing with EQC, etc., which we've all read about and seen over the last 3 years. But it is quite stressful because you're moving people out of their house. You've given them a period of, say, 6 weeks, and you've promised that it would be, you know, finished by then, and they have to move back in because they've got nowhere to go. So, you know, that's hard going. It's probably easier to go and build a new house. And of course, in a lot of cases, you're still involving the same subcontractors, the same amount of subcontractors and different people involved. So, yeah, it's been really tough.
You know, we've heard from other builders or tradespeople grumbles about fixed costs and pay rates and various other issues around working with EQR. Are they right? I mean, did you have issues as well in terms of what the homeowners' expectations were as to what they might get in relation to what you'd been told, this is the scope of works, this is what you have to deliver?
Oh, definitely. I mean, some people just think you're coming in to completely refurbish their house on the taxpayer, and often they're not too happy when they find out that that's not actually the case. Generally, I think Fletcher EQR have been extremely fair with their scopes, and most people, I would consider, got a really good deal. Yeah, I've seen some people with amazing deals, and some people that have, you know, had their house fixed up on the taxpayer and put it on the market when we've finished. You know, some people have been very lucky, I think.
So what, if any, recovery has occurred in that $1 million plus building market? Are you seeing a lot more activity there?
Now we are. It's all busy again, yeah. But that's only happened in the last 6 months. So yeah, that's happening again, right around the hills, Fennelton, Mirrorvale, you'll see it. And some bigger houses on the outskirts of town as well. So yeah, it's back to normal.
So how do you see, in that case, the next sort of 2 to 5 years shaping up for your own company, but also in more general terms for the local house building industry?
Very, very busy, Grant. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's going to be very, very busy, and it'll be tough going because there probably won't be enough of anything.